What I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk through all of the failures that I've had with our off-grid rain catchment water system and shed some light on why those things have been problems and why they don't work, and hopefully you will not make the same mistakes as we have. Hello out there, fellow sustainability team. My name's Jenny. I live in the Chihuahuan Desert. I live here with my husband. We've been living on this property for 5 or 6 years, something like that. I don't keep track of those things too well. We are completely off-grid. We get our power from the sun and our water from the rain. And this year, so it's September 2020. It's been a really tough year for multiple reasons. But in our neck of the woods, we really haven't had very much rain throughout the summer. We get the majority of our rainfall from the summer monsoons that happen, June, July, August, and we had zilch this year. So it's been tough as far as our water levels getting really low and kind of really trying to conserve water. It finally started raining, and we're so happy about that. And the desert is really happy, and all the plants are happy, and the animals are happy, and they're just, flowers are blooming, and the plants are putting on leaves, and there's so many great things about living in the desert. You just see this complete change of the landscape and everything around you when it finally starts to rain. But it's got me thinking about my off-grid rain catchment water system and the things that I have done that need either complete replacement at this point or I could have improved. And, I get in this world of looking at lots of water rain catchment systems on YouTube, and I see a lot of things that people can do differently. And the reason why I know these things don't work very well is because I've totally tried them and now they're in the epic fail category. Rule number 1, don't use PVC. PVC, it freezes, it breaks down in the sun. If you use PVC to plumb anything that's outside and is exposed to the sun, you might have 5 good years out of it, and then you have to replace it. So all the PVC gutters that you see, terrible idea. Take all those PVC gutters and throw them in the trash. Or you can wait 5 years and throw them in the trash because they're going to break down and then you'll have to replace them. So just use metal gutters. So we'll go down to one of the first tanks that I installed and talk about why that one sucks. So when you first move to your off-grid property, you're going to use whatever method is possible to get water to your property so you can live. And that's totally cool. You can, go to a community water source, you can fill jugs, you can bring it from town, whatever you have to do at first to get water to your property is completely acceptable. This is a very common water storage container that you will see people using for all kinds of different rainwater, drinking water, water storage for their off-grid houses. It is installed down here now in the state that it is in, only for wildlife because it's completely useless for anything else. For one, I originally bought this container because I needed to haul more water from town, and I wanted to be able to put this in the back of my van and haul water and then pump the water out into my bigger cistern and take this out of my van. And it turned out that I could not pick this up myself. Now, I live here with my husband, and so he's available for help sometimes, but he's not always available. So it was really important for me to be able to move this water container out when I needed to and he wasn't around. And so anyway, eventually I just said, well, you know what I'll do is I'll just install it permanently. And once I install it permanently, you can just add to my water storage capacity. This tank is not designed to have a continuous flow of water without a designated shutoff point, because there is no overflow on this tank. And so what happened was the rain kept coming in and pushing and pushing and pushing water into the tank. And then look at the top of this thing, it went bleh. And luckily for me at that point, it stopped raining when it got so full that it bent these top rails. But if it hadn't stopped raining, then who knows what would have happened. It would have just exploded or something like that. The second thing that we started to notice is it grows algae. And you really don't want big old chunks of algae in your water that goes into your house system. So even if you're not drinking it, it still clogs up pipes, and you have to do whatever you can to prevent the algae from growing. So I had a pretty intricate system of pieces of cardboard and paper and all kinds of stuff that I stuffed down in this cage, and then I had a piece of canvas tarp that I covered it all with, and I tied it all up, and I had all of these things that were going on, and it still did not prevent the algae. I probably could have painted it, but at that point I was kind of over it, so I just moved it down here. But I would say that the only useful purpose for this type of water tank is hauling only, and not storage, but just putting it in a vehicle or a trailer and going to get water from another water source, and then immediately taking that water and putting it somewhere else. And then this tank sits empty and dry. This is the rest of the plumbing, and poly pipe and these barb and hose clamp fittings I don't use anymore either, and because they leak. Oh, look at that. Hey, the ground's all wet right there. I wonder what's happening. Probably a leak, probably in that fitting right there. So if you're not supposed to use an IBC water tote, and you really can't afford to get a big tank yet, then what are you going to use for water storage? And this is one of my workhorses right here. I love this guy. So it is about a 50 gallon. It was food grade. I use this one for holding of water. Right now I've got a bunch of plants over here that I have to keep watered, and I use it for temporary storage on different job sites. I use it for long-term storage. I've used it for some of my smaller buildings, catching the rainwater straight from the gutter. If you had several of these and plumbed them together, that would be completely acceptable for a much cheaper but yet expandable water storage solution for rainwater that you could, keep in there kind of for a long term, and it wouldn't grow so much algae. But one of the greatest things about these guys, and why I would say everybody start with something like this, is that you can get totally inside this. This ring comes off like this, and then the entire top comes off. And now all the gunk that I've collected in here, I can actually get all the way inside this barrel and stick my arm all the way down in there and clean it all out. So even if it does get a little bit of algae, I can absolutely clean this entire thing. And this is what I would say, this barrel right here, far superior to anything else that you're going to use for smaller, early water storage on your off-grid, or even on your on-grid place. This is for a rain barrel, for anything. This is the way to go. Get this barrel right here. So once you've been living for a couple years, hauling water, you're going to get so tired of moving water around. 1 gallon of water weighs 8.6 pounds. And if you multiply that by all of the water that you use while you're not only here drinking and cooking and washing, but also building, that is a lot of water that you have to haul. So you're going to look for much bigger storage. Remember, don't use IBC totes. you want to go for something bigger. So this is a video about failures and what not to do. Do get a large storage tank. Do not plummet with PVC from the gutter, all right? Because like I said, PVC in the air, sitting in the sun, you might get 6 good years out of it, and then it's trash. Also, some other things that I've done with this one was I used 2-inch PVC, and I really should have a 4-inch metal gutter because that gives me a lot more surge capacity and it doesn't back up in the gutter. So sometimes when we have a big gully washer, this gutter is over 20 feet long. So 20-foot pieces are the longest pieces that you can get. So that means you have to have a splice in there. And if you don't make your splice quite perfectly, which you're probably not going to do unless you're perfect, then you're going to have, if you have water backup, then you'll have some water that actually comes out of that splice. And that's exactly what happens on this gutter because I didn't use a 4-inch metal downspout. I'll show you the reason why I did use PVC and also why I failed on that. Let's climb up to the top. So I got a nice long 4-inch gutter here, and even though we don't have any trees, so you know we're in the desert, there's not a lot of trees with leaves and stuff that can fly in here. There's still a lot of junk in here. There's a big old bug. Water bugs get in here. There's a lot of dirt. And so one of the reasons that I use this PVC gutter was I thought, man, this would be a really clean install. I'll use a shower drain right here, and I can put a screen over the top of the shower drain and really filter out all the water. And then on the bottom, I can just glue it to the PVC, and that will be a really nice, clean, i.e. sealed installation on my gutter. Well, guess what? I was so wrong about that. First of all, it doesn't seal like it should. The smaller screen I had to take off because it was getting filled with too many bugs and too much junk that, again, the water was backing up and going out the misaligned splice that I made in the gutter, and I was losing water. And also, there's a lip right here. So no matter what you do, you can't get a solid seal right against the metal, and then so there's always this kind of puddle of water that's sitting in there that eventually evaporates. Alright, so we're going to slide in here on the side of the big water tank in the side of the house construction zone, and I'm going to show you how that I have this plumbed. Hey look, you can see where I was working on the water heater and I completely got distracted and now started making a video about water systems. We have pretty mild winters down here. We're in zone 8B, which means it does freeze. It might get down to 28, 26. So I use old coolers to insulate my valves. You can actually add more insulation down in this old cooler, but it's just something to do with old cooler for one, and it helps to insulate all the pipes. So I have a 2-inch bulkhead that comes off of this tank that is completely buried in the dirt. It's back here. You will not be able to see that. And then I have a piece of galvanized nipple that comes out of there and gives me a little bit more length. And then I have this this valve right here. This is a 4-bolt 2-inch full port valve that is made by Banjo Corporation. It's made of fiberglass reinforced plastic. In the event of a seal failure, you can take this valve apart and you can put it all back together and refurbish it. Of course, you would have to empty the tank to do that, don't forget. And then I have the rest of it plumbed the rest of the way with polypropylene fittings and compression fittings to HDPE pipe. And that gives me superior freeze protection. Okay, so I feel like after all that I need to now draw some conclusions. And the first conclusion is that an IBC tote is not good for any type of long-term water storage. You can paint it, you can cover it with stuff, but really, like, when it comes down to it, save your money and either get multiple food grade blue 50-gallon barrels that you can plumb together and you can get inside and clean, or save your money and get a much larger water tank from Wiley or Enduraplast that is meant for long-term storage of water. The second conclusion is that PVC is a useful plumbing tool, but only as a temporary plumbing tool, basically. It's useful in our homes. When it's buried under the ground, it's great to use as drain lines, but when it's up in the air and it's exposed to the sun, there's nothing that you can do really that will make that product last longer than just a few years. The third conclusion is that I really actually like polypipe a lot for running all of my main water lines, but it's just it's the only failure in that is comes with the barb and hose clamp fittings. So if you get a chance, check out another video that I made called The Best Way to Join Polypipe, and that kind of gives you an overview and a discussion of the compression fittings, and I show you how to put them together and how all that works, and you can go further down the rabbit hole down that line. I think the biggest fail of all is if you are not collecting rainwater to use at your house in some capacity to water your plants all the way up to drinking water. If you're not using it, then that's the biggest fail.